Hi, I'm Denise, the Koala Mama. Valentine's Day is only a few days away, but there is still time to do these quick, easy, and inexpensive wall decor DIYs. I did all of these in under 2 hours and for less than $15. Let me know if you like craft and DIY content by pressing the subscribe button. No need to smash it, no need to hit it. Just a gentle click is all that's needed. Let's get started. First is this wood laser cut heart that has the word love and roses on it, and I thought this was so pretty. So I decided to start by painting the entire thing a light pink. Now, I've never actually used this type of a wood laser cut item before, and I found that it really soaks up the paint. So I think the next time that I use something like this, I'm going to start with a coat of proper wood primer and then move on to my colored paint. So I went back and forth about whether or not to paint the edges and little nooks and crannies. At first I thought I would, and then I decided it would be too tedious, but then once I started painting, I decided I needed to do that. So I did go in and do as much of those nooks and crannies as I could. I had to turn it this way, that way, upside down, backwards to get all of those little nooks and crannies. I did try to focus mostly on the outside edge and the lace. And I did need to break out a toothpick at one point to clear some of the paint that had pooled in some of those tinier little nooks. However, after I finished the project and had it hanging on the wall, I realized that you really do not see all of those edges, nooks, and crannies. So I don't think that in the future I will be as persnickety about how well I paint those particular areas. Anyway, I let that first coat dry and gave it a second coat. And as I was doing this initial paint, I realized for the first time that there are actually leaves in this picture, not just the roses. I needed to paint them differently than the roses, obviously, and green would be the obvious choice, but part of me really didn't want to put green in it since I don't have green anywhere else in the project. However, that was the only thing I could come up with, so green it is. Hindsight, again, I think I wish I had added some brown or maybe even some black to darken the green so it isn't such a bright color. But let me know in the comments if you would have chosen a different color. So once the leaves were done, it was on to the roses. Now I had planned all along to do some light brushing of red on the roses rather than painting them completely red. So I chose a fan brush, which did give me the look I wanted, but it was too wide to get the edges. And I ended up getting paint on a lot of the surrounding parts. So I grabbed another brush, which was actually an old brush with a lot of frayed bristles, and it actually worked perfectly well for the rest of the roses. So next I did the word love, which I did plan to do fully in red. I did the L, assuming that the entire word, like all of the letters of the word, would be on that bottom bar. But then after I did the L and started to do the O, I realized that was not the case. So I opted to do the O and the V smaller and the L and the E larger. I don't think it looks bad. It looks balanced, let's say that. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, if there was something I could have done differently. So I picked up this heart sign at the Dollar Tree. That is also where I got the wood piece. And I had decided right off the bat that that's what I wanted to use for the background. I thought it looked perfect pretty much the way that it was. I had thought a little bit about painting some of the black so that the inside of the wood heart was the only thing that had the black background. But in the end I decided not to fiddle with it because I didn't want to ruin it. So I just hot glued the laser cut sign to the heart sign, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So next is this Forever and Always sign that's also laser cut wood. And again, I painted the entire thing a light pink. Because there were larger cutouts, I determined that I definitely needed to paint the edges. So I thought it would be a lot easier because I thought that they were larger. Ended up being a lot more tedious than I thought it would be. So again, I had to pick it up, twist it, turn it to try and get as much of the edges as possible. But I let it dry and gave it a second coat. But then it took me a while to figure out and decide what I wanted to do with this. At first, I thought I would mix my red and pink to try and come up with a brighter pink color. So when I did this and started mixing it with a toothpick, I really loved the marbling effect. And it got me to thinking about the DIYs that I've seen of people that are actually doing this marbling where you pour all this paint all over everything. I wasn't going to go to that extreme, so I decided I was going to try and replicate that marbling look with a brush. So I poured out some red paint, put some white on one side and the pink on the other, and then used actually a fluffy makeup brush to try and get a striped look with those three colors. And I am really, really happy with how this turned out. So I picked up a random square sign, again at the Dollar Tree, to mount this on. I went ahead and painted the entire thing red, let it dry, and gave it a second coat. So when I was ready to mount the Forever and Always sign to the red sign, I actually didn't really like the red background. And then I kind of put white behind it, but I didn't like that either. And so I decided to try and do sort of an abstract white on top of the red that I was kind of hoping would complement the marbling vibe of the word sign. And while the white was drying, I added some additional hearts to the sign with good old Elmer's, which I managed to make a complete mess of. So white paint dry, I used hot glue to attach the word sign. I did have to go back and redo some of the edges. I think because the sign was so large and I tried to get so much of the lettering, by the time I got done with the glue, part of it was already drying. One thing that I thought of later is I know that there's a hack of using like a wet wipe on paint to kind of give it a translucent look, I guess, is how you might explain it. That technique might have worked even better on this sign than just leave the white paint as is. However, I am still digging the look of this sign. I loved this pizza love meter sign that I got at the 99. It actually has a base to sit on a table, but I wanted to put it on the wall. So I picked up this Easter sign to use as a background. So at first, I was going to paint the sign, and I started sanding off the glitter, and then I decided I would turn it over and use the back. I was super excited that the twine came off easily. I had no trouble removing the excess glue, and the sticker also came off with no residue. However, after thinking about it a bit, I decided to cover it with scrapbooking paper instead. So after gluing the paper, I used the hack I've seen numerous times of using sandpaper to finish the edges. And I had never used this hack before, and while it did take a bit longer than I thought it would, it was super easy and definitely left clean edges, and I'm really glad that I came across this particular hack. So I previously had removed the base from the pizza meter, and once the paper was on, I hot glued the meter sign to the papered sign. In hindsight, I wish I had used a combo of hot glue and E6000 because the pizza meter sign is a little heavy, but I think the hot glue will be just fine. So I needed a hanger for this sign, and while I first was looking at a white ribbon with red hearts, it didn't really go. And then I was looking at these beads that I actually had on my table as decor and decided they would make a great hanger. So I cut it to size, hot glued it on the back, and I also used the same type of hanger on the Forever and Always sign. So as I mentioned earlier, these 3 wall pieces took about 2 hours to complete, and that included the tedious painting, fixing all my mistakes, and the numerous times I just sat and pondered what the heck I was going to do next. And also probably 5 breaks to look for my glasses. If you found this video informative, inspiring, maybe a bit entertaining, I hope that you will click the like button and consider subscribing to my channel to get more video content like this. Thanks again for watching, and have a quality day.